So we're going towards what you already know in terms of the layout of a room. You're going to need some scissors, a ruler, pencil and paper. I'm putting a horizon line in just so I know what is above and below the horizon line. I know then that's going to be angled either down towards the vanishing point in the middle or up towards the vanishing point. So I'm measuring quite carefully to decide exactly the layout of that back wall of the room, thinking about how far above the horizon line I want to go. You can see I've gone slightly higher than the horizon line than I have below it, or slightly further above than below. And that's just the decision I wanted to make in terms of building the room. And then you take each corner to the corner of the page. So very, very simple. Each of those back wall corners go to the corner of your landscape A4 page. And that's very, very simply your room layout. Once you've done that, then you can start thinking about the collage materials you might use, magazines, newspapers, flyers. I've got an old Sonokian I can tear stuff out of and just kind of use bits and pieces from. So you can see this particular piece, which is a really beautiful bit of quite abstract art in that particular section. I can measure that so that it's the same as the dimensions of the left-hand wall, and once I trim that down, it's very easy for me to then put that in place and then look at the corner of the back wall up to the corner of the page and give myself the right angle. I might need to draw that bottom corner in so that I can get the angle right at the base where the floor joins the wall. Trimming that down, I can then place that onto the page and see that it fits nicely, so I can give myself a feature wall. Obviously you might decide you want to use some of your photographs, you might have some textures you could photograph that you could put on the wall. The one thing you need to do, you need to remember to avoid imagery that doesn't follow the rules of perspective. So if I decided to use a piece of newspaper, for example, with words on it and so on, it wouldn't give me perspective. It would look like it would flatten out that wall. So with a piece of abstract work or something that's just pure texture, that's fine. So I'm being really careful here whilst I'm drawing the shape of the window. I'm using the vanishing point carefully, checking my angles, checking everything is straight, redrawing if it's not. Don't be afraid, don't think as soon as I've put a pencil mark in, that's it, I have to follow it. Check, use your eye to just make sure you're happy it's straight. If you're cutting a section out, I usually chop it quite a few times through the middle of that section because it just means it's less likely to curl up or rip as I move the scissors around. I've only got this chunky pair of scissors on me, so it's quite difficult to do a really detailed bit of cutout with such a large pair of kitchen scissors. So that's why chopping it in a few different places and really taking my time as I work around to chop, just particularly to get into those angles and make sure everything's really, really, really straight. So don't guess it, use those lines. And then you can erase the horizon line if it's showing through the window, through a doorway, whatever. You can just get rid of it so that it's going to look nice and neat. If I flip it over, it should work on the opposite side of the wall, but I don't want to use that side. I'm going to use that side for a doorway. So I'm sticking just with some Pritt stick, going to stick that in place. And then I want to think about the thickness of the wall and drawing that in. So very simply, just using another horizontal line with my ruler just to get the inside bit of that wall right, and then straightening up, just making sure I use good straight horizontal lines for the top and bottom of that inner wall, and then joining those angles up and out towards the vanishing point. That gives me that neat edge so that the wall has a thickness. If I then decide to cut out the inside of that window, it means I can hover over different images to decide what I want to see out of the window. Now remember, you can either stick the imagery on top of, or you can cut out sections, whichever suits you. But I like being able to actually have an open window to look out through so that I can try it over different subject matters. You can see over a card, over different bits from magazine pages. I think this one's from the Sonokian again. And I've decided I want to use this little piece as the view out of the window. But I go through lots of different magazines to kind of pick out different bits and pieces that may be useful later, but also it means that I've given myself some ideas that I could come back to. and it's useful just to have a stash of different images. So be thoughtful as you're going through the newspapers and magazines and so on. This page, when I opened it up, I thought, excellent, there's some chairs that I could use, and they'll probably be just the right size for the room, but just taking out bits I can use for colour later is useful. So I can stick that down, again using my Pritt stick, I can stick that down so that I get to see this particular view through the window. Obviously you could go into more detail, so you might decide you want window ledges, window panes, you want to break it up into different sections. You can make it as detailed as you like. So I'll obviously come back to cutting that chair out later. In the meantime, I want to create a doorway. Now I didn't have anything that I thought would be useful for the doorway. You might decide to use one of your photographs. You might actually take a photograph of a view that you could see out of a doorway, going away at the angle that you want it to be moving away from you at. That would be really cool, but at the moment I'm just going to use this. Now you can see here where I've joined the bottom corner of that to the vanishing point. That's not going to work, because actually the angle of where the floor meets the wall is going towards that bottom corner of the back wall. So I had to redraw that in to make sure that it was actually the right angle. That's a really easy mistake to make, because you start to think everything has to go to the vanishing point. But of course, if it's the bottom of the door, it's got to go along the angle of where the floor joins the wall. So getting that right first, and then everything else will go to the vanishing point. So I can trim that section down. Again, drawing in the top of the doorway, that's going to join to the vanishing point, but it must be stuck in the right position. So you'll see here, again, another really easy mistake to make, but also really easy to correct. Sticking it in, and then when I went to draw the sort of frame around it so that you could see the depth of the wall and so on, I realised that I hadn't stuck it in exactly the right position. So lining up my ruler with the vanishing point, I could then put it in exactly the right position, and then that allowed me to draw the extra bits and pieces so that I could have the depth of the wall. Now I would line this up, I would make sure that this is the same thickness as the wall on the opposite side. I don't think I drew that the same thickness, I think it was slightly thinner. But I was rushing to make sure that you guys got as much video as possible, so I would make sure that that wall is the same thickness on both sides. But you can see now that I've got depth going out towards this crazy woodland through the doorway and a view through the window. On that back wall, and I would do the back wall pretty much last, because that back wall has the vanishing point on it, and because it has the vanishing point on it, I really want to be able to see that vanishing point. I don't want there to be anything disrupting it, but I can get something ready to put on that wall. So you can see here I'm choosing a section of an image that I'm going to potentially put on the wall as you know, a big print, a big photograph, a big painting, whatever it's going to be. So you could try things out. I like to sort of cut bits out and just hover it over the top and see, right, do I like that? Does it work? I might use it, I might not use it. You can trim it down really nice and carefully, and perhaps put a frame around it as well. See if you like it on the wall, and then leave it for later so that you can stick it in, because there are other bits you might want to do first. So floors, ceilings, etc. You can experiment with different bits and pieces. You might have some textures you want to use. You might want to create the effect of floorboards. That's really easy to do, because obviously as long as you use your ruler and mark along the bottom wall, so your back wall, you could mark every kind of ½ centimetre, and then you just join each of those to the vanishing point and stretch it across the room, and that's going to give you nice floorboards. If you just cut out sections, you can see I've used that chair again that we found earlier. So being really careful, because obviously this has quite fiddly bits on, so it's going to be a bit more delicate once you put that Pritt stick on the back of it. It's going to want to curl up, so just being really careful as you add bits on. So you can see if you add a piece into the room, something like a chair, really feels like it gives you that perspective, it gives you depth. And there you can see I'm just erasing my horizon line because I really don't need it anymore. I've got lots of things that will help me place all the other objects in the room. If I decide I want to do something, for example, with the ceiling, again, you might decide you want to use beams, you might use a photograph that you've already taken and just scale it to size. I'm just going to hover it over some magazine. I found this page that had some quite dark areas, so I was trying to decide would the dark areas work, flipping it from one side to the other on the page, thinking, right, which works best. This has some text running through it. In fact, both have text running through it. And then going through the magazine to see, does anything else work better? I decided no, this is quite nice, quite industrial looking. So again, tore that page out, Pritt stick onto the back of the page, which now I can keep kind of using and sticking on top of different collage bits and pieces, and then lining it up carefully to stick in. This was just getting rid of some of the stuff on the back, so it's not kind of, you know, lots of loose sections, and then trimming it to keep it nice and neat. So there I've got my floor, I've got a feature wall and a window, doorway, etc. Decided to put a different image in the background. This was a card I was given. Took a colour photocopy of the card. You can just print out whatever you want in the background. And then again, you can see I was rushing here, so I was not using my ruler. I do not recommend not using your ruler. Decided it was too big, trimmed it down a little bit more, and then decided I was going to put that, give that a frame. So put it on top of another dark bit of magazine, stuck it on top, and then trimmed around it again. Now I would do all of this if this was a piece I was going to complete and really, you know, put a lot of time and effort into. I'd make sure I'm always using a ruler for these bits and pieces. But as this is just an example for you guys, I rushed this stage, but it was okay. It came out fairly well lined up. And then stick that piece down and just keep going. Be imaginative. You can put characters in, you can put posters on the wall, do whatever you want. It's all yours, and enjoy.